Is Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. It is 4 p.m. This is a Moscow City Council special meeting. If all of you out in the audience would love to join me, I am going to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all for being here with us. And of course, our item is COVID-19 response and review and discussion. Gary Reeder, you've got the floor, sir.
What we have here today are special council meeting with two agenda items. First is the COVID-19 response and review and discussion based upon recent proclamations, if you will, or governance sent out by Governor Brad Little in light of the emergency medical orders that have been issued by Mayor Lambert and were extended by City Council by two differing resolutions. Those orders will expire, they're in effect until May 5th, so they will expire at midnight or 11:59 on Monday, May 4th. That date was chosen because it would give the council an opportunity to review what was going on in the state and in the community, and have that happen to fall on a regular council meeting night. Since that time, as you know, Dave Jepson, the director of the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, at the governor's behest, issued a couple of different stay-home orders, one on March 25th, the other on April 15th. And in those stay-home orders, they covered quite a bit of ground. Essential businesses, you've read them, they're pretty in-depth. Since that time, we've been looking for additional guidance from the governor. He gave that guidance last Thursday when he issued his Rebound Idaho initiative or plan, issued guidelines by which the economic recovery of Idaho was going to be proceed in 4 separate stages, to begin at 12:01 on May 1st, Friday, May 1st, which is this Friday. The current stay-home order issued by Director Jepson expires 11:59 on Thursday night. So we go right into, under the governor's directive, we go right into stage 1 of that 4-stage recovery. And you all got a copy of that recovery in your packets, and people can view it online if they like by going to the governor's website or just typing in Rebound Idaho, and that will take you to it. At any rate, that 4-stage recovery has different levels by which, once the prerogatives of one level are met, then you can move on to the next level, so on and so forth. Non-essential businesses essentially are given the opportunity to provide proof that they are achieving the social distancing and some of the requirements, and they will submit, in some of those cases, plans to the local director of our health district, Carol Murley, who we're fortunate to have here on our call today. And that will go through the last stage. So what we have provided to you, besides what's in your packet, which is the background for most of this, we have also provided you with 2 draft resolutions, one terminating the 2 emergency medical orders issued by the mayor and city council as of the end of this meeting today, and an alternative that would have it terminate at 11:59 on Thursday, April 30th. Those were going to be alternate recommendations by staff, just depending on what the council direction was. Of course, the council can modify those in any way it wants. It could also let the current orders stand. They were the resolutions of city council until they expire on their own at 11:59 on Monday, May 4th. However, since that time, we've done additional research. We've determined that the guidelines that the governor issued last Thursday are just that. They are guidelines. He has not issued, Director Jepson has not issued any order The governor has not issued any executive order with the specificity that we believe that provides the teeth, if you will, to make that order viable. So they are merely guidelines. The governor had a press conference today, or a conference call with the AARP, where he indicated that he will provide that order or further guidance on Thursday when he has his press conference and his conference call with local elected officials. So there are a lot of questions to be asked, and a lot of questions I believe that people want to ask Carol about maybe what all this all means. But the recommendation from staff is that we table this matter after discussion. The council table it until an additional special council meeting that we are ready to schedule with direction from the mayor and council to take place on Thursday, April 30th at 5 o'clock. By that time, we will have that additional order, hopefully from the governor, and the council can then make a decision. Do you terminate, modify, or leave the current emergency orders alone? So with that, I will stand for any questions, but again, in deference to Director Murley's time, we may want to see if she has anything she'd like to add.
Gary, I would like to put something in there before we get started with Carol. And thank you, Ms. Murley, for being with us today. But one of the things I wanted to say was when we came out and looked at these guidelines, and we've got Mia Batista with us as well today, and it was one of her opinions, as well as Gary's, that we table this thing and move on for another meeting until we get something concrete from the governor so we can sink our teeth in, because these are actually guidelines. But with that being said, what I'd like to do, Carol, when Gary and I spoke to you last Thursday, and you gave us kind of a synopsis of what you thought his plan was and looking forward to it. And so I would like you to give us a small synopsis of what we discussed and then open it up to counselors to ask you any type of questions. How would that be? So Carol, you'll have to unmute yourself. And
thank you, Mayor. We live on this platform, so of course I even forgot to unmute myself. So thank you for that reminder. So first of all, Gary, great job in reviewing the happenings from early on. It seems like we've been in this for months and months, and we forget about some of that history. So that was exactly what has happened. Again, I wanted to thank the mayor and all of the council for your leadership early on in this COVID process that we're in. You all, the city of Moscow, took the lead across the whole state and quickly implemented your own ordinances, your own directives for the safety of the citizens in Moscow. So thank you again for that leadership, Mayor. It's being looked at and touted as one of the strongest pieces of guidance, not guidance, but actual ordinance that people could actually follow. So with that, like Gary said, the newest release from our governor's office, and again, I'm not a spokesperson for the governor's office, but being asked a lot about interpreting, and I do sit on the governor's task force, but we are actually not privy to his early release of documents. So there we go. But guidance is, in the public health world, not enforceable. So it's just guidance. And so that's what we have right now before us in these 4 stages, like Gary had mentioned, in a rolling pattern so that we can roll out openings of different businesses and events as such in kind of small 2-week segments. And there was a plan for that, just because we seem to be pretty calm right now with cases and not a huge increase across the state or especially in Latah County. But we also know that at any point that virus could raise its nasty little head again. And if we're rolling out in 2-week segments, we can then look at what's happened in 2 weeks, determine if any of those new businesses or entities that have reopened, or maybe the link that we have to a new outbreak. And if shut, maybe need to back out and close down those entities or those businesses again for a while. So rather than just everyone y'all come at once, and then harder for public health and the science to figure out if and when an outbreak happens and where it got started, this will help all of us as we're phasing this in to make this a little calmer. Well, calmer for the disease investigators, us on this end, but definitely not calmer for our businesses. This is very confusing to our business community, to our society as a whole, because everyone wants to get back to work. And we understand that. Our economy understands that. We need people back in the saddle, back doing their jobs, back with a paycheck. So the sooner we can get this all rolled out, the better. But that is the reasoning behind his rolling it out in stages like he had done. The first stage, and they all kind of build on each other, but they all are on the base platform of understanding that we will continue to have social distancing for a while. And through the end of June is what his plan is in this guidance again. And that the gatherings also will roll out slowly, so that we know that the closer people are to each other, exchanging cough and sneeze and, those sorts of virus exchanging behaviors, that's where we're going to maybe get in more trouble. So those are going to stay as the foundation to building on the layers of opening in his plan. We saw quickly that in stage 1, which like Gary said, will happen beginning May 1 to 15, the gatherings will still stay small. Travel restrictions are still in place. Our main goal is protecting our most fragile population, which is our senior citizens. We know from a national look and a US look that the seniors over age 65, especially those with underlying health conditions, have been our most vulnerable and most targeted population for this virus. They're also the ones that have the highest death rate. And if you have not looked at the data in our 5 counties recently, you'll see that Nez Perce County leads the state in the number of deaths in our elderly, especially the population over age 80. So they are more fragile and more vulnerable to this virus for sure. So what the rest of us are doing is helping protect that vulnerable population. The governor did open our places of worship for guidance starting on the 1st of May, as well as childcare centers and youth activities. Now, that's a pretty broad statement for sure. And so what we know with each phase or each stage as they're rolling open new businesses, that the state is then also writing attached guidance for those businesses. So quickly by Thursday, we should be seeing guidance on places of worship, guidance on daycares, and guidance on youth activities. So those are in draft right now and quickly coming out from the state to be posted on the governor's Idaho Rebound site as well. So we can expect to see similar for phase 2 or stage 2 with restaurants and hair salons that can now open. Our indoor gyms and our recreational facilities can now open under phase 2, which starts on May 16th, and guidance will be coming for each of those categories as well. Just so you know, so public health has actually been tagged in this staged rollout specifically for food establishments, restaurants to reopen, for our childcare centers to reopen, and for our schools. Those are the 3 areas that public health has been given special, deemed us to be the ones to help those entities open efficiently and effectively and safely for the public. So the hairdressers, the hair salons, the nail salons, the massage parlors, they're not coming to me for any okay to open. They're following the guidance that will be listed out there without a whole lot of oversight from another entity. If they have a licensing bureau or a licensing group like cosmetologists do, their licensing entity at the state may be helping them with guidance as well in making sure that they are opening safely. But for this point, public health will be helping the food establishments, our daycares, and our schools. So, Mr. Mayor, we could go on to that. One of the confusions, I think, is that the bars and restaurants are not connected to open at the same time. That if you're truly a bar or a nightclub, you're not opening until phase or stage 3. But if you are a restaurant and a bar combined that serve food, you are being classified as a restaurant. So you will open with the restaurants, not waiting until there's a bar opening like that. But it's very confusing for our population, very confusing for our business owners that own restaurants, bars, and all of those other businesses that are in later phases or stages, and why they can't open at this point. So lots of questions, lots of concerns, lots of issues for everyone, depending on what work environment you're in and whether or not it's children related or senior citizen related or business in general that want to open and serve the public. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I will stop for question.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And you'd mentioned bars opening in stage 3. Really, they cannot open until stage 4 with these guidelines. Stage 2 would be for restaurants and restaurants with bars or restaurants. But I just wanted to make that point. Right. And before I ask counselors, on the protocol page, one of the things that it said, and this was for all stages, is that and this goes with the youth activities you were talking about in stage 1. One of the things we run into, it says engage in physical distancing of at least 6 feet and wear face coverings in public places. And so with youth activities, it seems to me like, and this will be more defined for us, hopefully on Thursday when we get that conference call from the governor. But anyway, I wanted to point those out because with that, I don't know what kind of youth activities you can really do. If you're maintaining that 6 feet distance, these kids are not going to be able to play baseball or soccer or something of that nature where they're going to be right amongst each other. So I don't know what they meant by that, so we're going to have to find out. But I want to open the floor to counselors to ask Carol any questions they have. Please raise your hands. I'll recognize you. Maureen. Turn your volume on, Maureen. Thank you.
One of my concerns is when we open up and then if we have to close down, do we realistically think we can get businesses to close down? There's enough concern about the impact that this is having on our businesses today. And my fear is that unless the idea of going backwards is going to be really, really hard to implement.
Mr. Mayor and Maureen, I would totally agree. And I think that's where guidance is, again, the key word here. If it continues to just be guidance without any teeth in it, I would assume we will have businesses that say, I'm going to forego the guidance and keep my business open. And I think that's something we may have to deal with.
So, which also is that question of, I guess my sense is that one of the ways that we can really help restrict the spread is by wearing masks. And I think that at this point, when it first happened, we had a lot more people sitting there doing, wearing masks than we do now. And I was wondering if public health had any advice on helping the community on advertising and promoting it. I'll give you a really quick example. Somebody was working in a yard next door, had his mask on, and he was a laborer. A truck comes by with other laborers in it, and they just belittled him on what are you doing being a weenie just wearing a mask. The issue there is we have to suddenly really implement a plan and an advertisement that promotes it is cool to wear a mask. Be safe, be healthy, and take care of your community.
Thank you for sharing that. I do think that is a new standard. We also know that the masks have to be worn by a lot of people or all the people because it's truly more effective in catching the virus prior to when I am symptomatic and spreading it to you than it is for me if I'm well and you're sick and you don't have one on. It can still get through my mask. So we both need to be wearing them on both ends. I appreciate your comment about doing some advertising and some messaging, strong messaging for our population. That is a great idea. We have not done that.
Okay, I seen Art had his hand up. Art?
I do. I've got kind of two questions, and I'll just hit them both at once, and you can take them from there. But part of the protocols in the 4-stage recovery process says no significant increase. Significant is a troublesome word because a one-person increase in Latah County would be 20%. One-person increase in Nez Perce would be less than 2%. So how is significant being judged, and whether it's a good idea to be basing significant on the entire state or more regionally based? Second question is, the biggest impediment to implementing all of this that I can see deals with the availability of testing. And the basis of any testing program assumes that you have random tests or tests equally distributed across the population to be able to track and to estimate the degree of infection that's actually out there. And we're stuck with a rationed form of testing that is used only for people exhibiting symptoms. And what are the plans, if you know what they are, for enhancing the number of tests that we can do? So those are my two thoughts, questions. Thanks.
Well, you are great at reading the fine details, because significant is one of the words. We have several words that are really not measurable. So I've been asking that same question. The other word in here is robust. Do we have robust testing that's out there? And so the questions coming through also are, what does robust mean? And what are the metrics behind significant and behind robust? So we are having those discussions on the measurement being local versus statewide, and even local by city or county versus our 5 counties in our public health district, because we are different across our 5 counties. Clearwater County and Lewis County still have no reportable cases. Latah County has 4, but hot off the press, you're having 1 more reported today. But one, in a whole 2-week time period is still so minimal. We also do not have community spread in any of our cases in Latah, Idaho, or Nez Perce counties. So we can track those cases told back to someone else with the disease who initially started it. Most of them have been from travelers early on in the month of March, traveling out of the area on either vacation or work and back to Idaho and brought the disease with them. So we have no community spread, meaning that you have it in your home and you've spread it to your children. There isn't that yet going on. So I think that has to be weighed when we talk about significant increase as well. Onesies are not significant to me. A cluster that we would have community spread is definitely significant, and we would need to look at that. But we had this discussion with the mayor and Gary earlier too. Latah counties and Moscow's numbers are really good, and we shouldn't go off of the numbers from Ada County and Blaine County because of their huge numbers when we're making decisions, I think, for our local level. So that would be something also to consider as we're implementing and making a little stronger guidance, stronger language than guidance. And then as far as the testing goes, so the state of Idaho follows CDC rules, and so does local public health. And most of the states across our country do not have adequate testing to open it up to all those that are asymptomatic. So just to say, anybody off the street wants to be tested, come on in. They are still prioritizing testing for those with symptoms, those that are healthcare workers, those that are EMS, law enforcement, those that have high visibility contact points across our state. I don't know if and when we will ever open it up for you all come. I haven't seen that as an option even in Idaho yet because of our limitations in testing. We are still sending our tests out of state primarily, or to the Idaho Bureau of Labs in Boise. We have no local testing options at this point either. We're working hard with Gritman and St. Joe's and Clearwater Valley Hospital to get some quick tests or some rapid tests coming into our 5 counties, but we're still not there yet as far as our testing goes. And those machines, just so you know, can test one person at a time. And it takes about 15 or 20 minutes for one person. So again, even if we get some rapid tests, it doesn't mean we can do a population-wide with any efficiency.
Okay. All right, other counselors? Okay, Brandi.
Thank you. Carol, I just wanted one of the comments you just made in response to Art asking about the definitions of significant. I know a lot of those things are not particularly clear and we're waiting for further definition for that. But you mentioned the sort of cluster of counties that could be considered even rather than a single county by county. And as we know, the situation in Nez Perce, just neighboring us, is very different. And I think it does need to be considered unless there are going to be restrictions from county to county, not allowing people from adjacent counties to come in. Then I think what's happening in our adjacent counties, just out of necessity, does need to be a part of the consideration when deciding what is the trend. Is it decreasing or increasing? Again, unless we decide that we're not going to allow anyone. I think that because we did act so quickly, we have been doing very well here, but we have to keep the neighbors in mind. And so one question is just your opinion on that consideration of the cluster of counties versus a county by county approach to gradual reopening.
Thank you. And Mayor, most of our responses statewide are by a regional approach, just because our public health districts are regional. And that's what the initial thought, according to the governor, this is a statewide approach, and we're not lowering that to the local level. I know some of the mayors and the commissioners also were having discussions with our governor on whether or not that should be some of that decision-making moved to more of the local level instead of a statewide. But for now, the guidance approach is statewide. So we are giving some interpretation that we could even move to a regional approach with our data and helping our businesses and healthcare workers, healthcare facilities manage the changes based upon the data that we have. For us, Brandi, our 5 counties are a real close-knit area, and public health is monitoring Nez Perce County very closely, as you might guess. Because we still don't have community spread again, because of the outbreak that we are having in Nez Perce County around that senior citizen population that are contained, then we really are thinking the risk to the public is so very small still. But we are making sure that people travel, people move, people, come and go. People from the Valley go to Gritman for healthcare. They go to Pullman for healthcare. We have to be cognizant of our whole region, I think, even our border community. I don't know what we'll do if Idaho rolls out this and the state of Washington we know isn't rolling this stages out, how that will be managed with our population that live in one state and work in another. So thank you for that.
And I have one more specific to the health department's role with these different entities that, according to the plan, are expected to come up with their procedures and their plans. And it kind of hints that maybe they need to be somehow submitted somewhere and approved before they can reopen. That's not entirely clear. And I think you said that the health department is going to be involved with the restaurants on that front. So my question is, do the restaurants submit those? The health department provides that feedback and either gives them a yes or a no. And with those other entities like the places of worship and the hair salons and the gyms, who do they submit those plans to? Do you
Great
know?
question. Great question. And on your restaurant question, yes, there's being developed like a check sheet for them to say, yes, I've looked at the sanitation and we're implementing this. And yes, we have marks on the floor that say everything is 6 feet apart. And yes, we're only allowing 20 people in the restaurant at one time and we're doing head count. And yes, we've implemented stricter hand washing for our employees and sanitizing and those sorts of checklists. They do need to send that into public health, not necessarily for an inspection, but at least us to put it on file and to communicate with them that, yes, we received it. Looks like you're going to do a good job, but you need to call us if you have questions or concerns. So less of a hard handle than an assistance education and training role for the restaurants, the daycares, and the schools. Now, for our nail salons and the bars, the gyms and some of those others, unless they have a licensing entity, there's no requirement for them to turn in any kind of a check sheet or anything. We are getting ready to post one out on our website for all businesses in general that just give the talking points on, make sure you think about the 6 foot distancing and you can do this. You can stagger hours, you can mark things on the floor. Make sure you look at the sanitation for your employees. Make sure you're limiting interactions if you can. Also telling them how to check temperatures if they have employees. We are recommending that everyone will be using a face covering and doing temperatures every day. So now, that's a new thing that we've never done in our workforce either. But I think for gearing up, I think that would be a common sense thing. Just even if it's asking people, are you well today? Headache, any of those signs or symptoms, and they're not taking temperatures, at least employees are going to know that somebody's monitoring their wellness. We've let a lot of people go to work sick in the past. And that's just going to be an open door for getting this back into a work site.
So you would be making those kind of checklists
Yes.
for all of these different entities to use. And the most imminent one that's in the governor's plan is the places of worship, because that's just on April 1st. So I'm hoping there's enough time.
May the 1st.
If that is indeed what ends up happening. We'll see what the governor says on Thursday for them to get those plans together.
I see Sandra has got her hand up. Sandra?
Thanks. Carol, this is really
I'll go to
tagging
Gina.
on to what Brandi was talking about. But when I'm thinking of childcare or restaurants or places of worship where public health is sort of helping and providing some guidance, if you approve those plans and they come in and things look good according to paper, let's say someone takes their child to a daycare and they realize that things aren't happening the way that they're supposed to, or in any other entity, what is the next step then? Who do they go to say, I'm worried that they are not following the guidelines?
So our childcare establishments are mostly licensed anyway, either through the city or through the state, and public health does inspections on those routinely. So there's a real formal, I hate to say complaint process, but complaint process for parents or community members, especially in childcare centers, to call, give us issues, and then we have staff, public health has staff that inspect those daycares and go out to help re-educate and get those people in line. Most of the issues we have now are around the food prep area versus the diaper change area, or the ratio of kids versus providers, and those sorts of things. But I do think with the childcare centers, even the Centers for Disease Control and their guidance says special things like parents shouldn't come into the center to pick up their children. They should wait at the curb or drive by, and the staff member should walk that child out. So there's less interaction with parents who might be in the community, bringing that back into the childcare center. Things like that will be given in this guidance to those childcare centers.
If I could follow up just real quick on that, how does childcare or even like a Sunday school class look in terms of small kids, especially trying to social distance when you only have a few adults?
And it's not possible in my world, and probably all of yours. You can't social distance a 2 or a 3-year-old, and you also can't make them wear a face covering unless they're playing, games or something. So the guidance that says if the workers are, checking temperatures on workers, at least when, twice a day if necessary, asking on sick children when they're coming in, but limiting the flow of outsiders amongst that childcare. So once you get a group, like your employees at the city even, you're kind of your own little culture and your own little, incubation place, when somebody's sick and you kind of all stay well together. Daycares are similar like that. If we can stop an ill child from coming in, we can usually protect the rest of those kids from getting it as well. But it's stopping it before they walk in that door. So it's going to be a new screening process for those daycares. Now, many daycares never closed. They stayed open through all of this in order, especially to help facilitate daycare and day services for those emergency preparedness people, those healthcare workers, those that could not stay home. So we have many health childcare centers across their district that are still open and doing the best they can, but social distancing is just not possible in that population.
Okay, well, I know Gina had a question. How are we doing on time, Carol? Are we doing okay for you?
Oh, yes, I'm doing fine, Mayor,
Okay.
but I don't want to take up your whole agenda.
No, you can take all the time you need because we're on your schedule, but Gina's got a question.
Good afternoon, Carol. My question revolves around enforcement and the fact that I'm sure that you do a certain degree of that now anyway, if businesses don't necessarily pass a health inspection or that sort of thing. But what happens when there's 200 businesses waiting to get that special stamp of approval on their plan? Are they waiting until Wednesday when your staff, which, none of us have huge staffs, but is there going to be a line? Is there going to be additional staff brought on? And can we get some wording other than guidance? If we're going to try and enforce these things, I think they need to be, businesses shall or owners shall, rather than, a good idea would be. So there's a question in there somewhere about enforcing. How do we do this? How does this all roll out in a smooth manner?
Well, I would think legal counsel, Gary, will tell us that guidance is not enforceable. And so I'm with you on that term because it kind of fits in with significant and robust and the rest of those words that are in this document that we don't know how to measure. So public health doesn't have a badge. We've had some discussions and have heard from some of our county sheriff on opposite sides that say, yes, they're going to enforce it. They'll enforce the governor's guidance because that's what they're going to do. And then we have some sheriff that say, we're not going to enforce anything because it's just guidance. So public health has always we do have an enforcement arm in food inspections, and we can shut them down for, bad health issues, bad food handling, with guidance of 6 feet and maybe a number in the establishment. We don't feel like we have any teeth to go in and shut them down because of lack of following the guidance. So we probably need that bigger discussion amongst all of us at some point. Gary, I'm looking at you.
Well, Gary, we've got Gary. We have Mia with us as well. Should we ask Mia to answer that and talk a little bit about that, Gary? Mia, I know you're out there somewhere because I seen you earlier. There she is.
I'm here. Yeah. So I agree. The guidance certainly is just that. It's guidance. It's nothing that we can legally enforce. And it would be my advice that we not use our police force to take any action. There's no teeth. There's no teeth to the guidance. It's just that guidance.
Thank you, Mia.
Yep. I mean, I can certainly answer more questions, but I agree with Carol that this is just guidance and there has no teeth.
I think one of the things we have to remember, and I'm going to ask on Ann here in just a second, but one of the things we all have to remember is, going through this entire process that we're going through, this is something we've never gone through, businesses have never gone through, cities have never gone through, except 100 years ago when many things were different. And what we're going to have to rely on is businesses doing the right thing and being smart about how they do it. And I think probably my point of view is that if you have businesses that are not adhering to this or doing the social distancing and doing the right things, then we're going to see them get some real bad publicity very, very quickly. And I think those businesses will know that going in up front, even though these are guidelines, and we're going to know more on Thursday, so hopefully we'll get more meat into this thing. But it seems to me like we're going to have to be very, very trustworthy of our folks. And I think after being shut down for 6 weeks, I think these businesses will get that, where they're not going to just storm right out there. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think. Ann, did you have a question for Carol? You're the only one that has not asked one yet.
No, not at this time. Thank you, though.
Okay, I'll go to Maureen then. Turn your volume on, Maureen. Oh, is that you? Your volume's not on.
It is now.
There it is. Thank you.
So one is a follow-up to Gina's question, which is the question of staffing, because one of the concerns is that public health is like all other governmental entities and probably doesn't have an excess of staff. And suddenly in the midst of this, we're imposing a lot of reviewing proposals and approving them, as well as doing the tracking. And I was curious on how that staffing is going to be actually, how you're going to complete the staffing, or how you're going to deal with the staffing issue.
So thank you, Maureen. I could tell you the woes of staffing local public health, but it probably doesn't matter. We used to run about 90 employees in our public health district, and we have 50 now. So you're right, staffing is an issue. Right now, most of our hands on deck are in contact tracing for those that have been confirmed with a positive case, so that we can call the contacts every day. Now, fortunate on most of our senior citizen population that's been affected by this have had few contacts because they've been in kind of a protected environment. So our workload at this time has been not as crazy as it could be. Our environmental staff are geared up and ready to go for these reviews. We have an environmental, at least one, we have 2 inspectors in Moscow that handle the current workload of all of our restaurants, bars, and our childcare centers on a touch basis routinely. So they're confident they can turn around quickly with the review of these plans that they're being submitted, that will be submitted by the restaurants, and that they can be offering guidance and education, some Zoom trainings like this for our restaurant owners and our workers out there, so that we can get them all, back on the same page as far as sanitation and hand washing and cleanliness and social distancing.
Okay, so staffing is an issue. Just to kind of sum that up. The other one is that there seems to be a variety of different opinions with respect to social distancing. So the VP comes out and says it's going to be done by, we can get rid of that by the end of May and Memorial Day. This proposal says the end of June, and Dr. Birx said on Sunday that it was going to go through the summer. Is there going to be some change to this, or what are we going to do about that social distancing? Because I believe if we start putting out a document that says it's going to happen at the end of June, people will no longer do the social distancing. And so it's just some kind of getting some sense of consistency.
Could you make that happen?
No, I bet we all wish we could make that happen, but that's a huge concern.
And I think that's such a problem with our documentation and everything across our country, is there is no consistency because we all want to be different, But the governor's guidance does roll out in his stages, opening up the number of people in gatherings, like you just said. And so by July 4th, we should be able to have more than 50 people in a gathering. But up until then, it'll be, 10 to 50 or under 10 still, or, those numbers that are in the guidance again. We could roll back if we see a spike in this disease by summer, roll back to the real isolation, no more than, 1 or 2 in a crowd, or not even that many.
So I have another question. I'm sure I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time.
Well, we're getting real close, Marie, because we promised I promised Carolyn we would let her out at 4:45, and it's 4:45 now. So we're running in her time. So What I want to do is thank you, Carol, for being with us today. Thank you for the wonderful information. I think it was great for all counselors to hear what you had to say about a number of different things. And you're our expert. And I think what we need to do, folks, is because we've got these guidelines in front of us, and how many times have we said they're guidelines? We're going to know more hopefully on Thursday. And so we'll be able to make some decisions then. So with that being said, I want to just thank you and let you go. And thank you, Miss Murley, for being such a superstar for us and letting us know as much as you did and being very candid with us and right up front. I appreciate the help.
Thank you, Mayor. Definitely not the expert, but we're all learning together, and we're all in it together as well. So I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The offer stands if you ever want to chatter about this again.
Well, that
feel
could
free
happen
to
in
email.
2 days, so so it could be pretty quick. So thank you again, Carol. With that, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anyway, Gary, so from that point, we heard some good discussion. Did we lose Ann? I don't see Ann up there. Ann, you still with us? You disappeared.
She's there, just not her video. But
Oh, okay. We don't have a video button. But anyway, you guys are getting a kind of a flavor for this guideline. And one of the things that Gary and I talked about earlier, and Mia was a part of the conversation before Gary and I spoke, but Thursday, there's supposed to be an announcement by the governor. Gary, would you talk about that and then talk about what our idea is here? Gary, you got your volume on?
I never know if Jen's going to switch me on or. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're on now.
On Thursday, the governor is holding a press conference, and he'll have his weekly conference with local elected officials. So as far as that goes, he's indicated, and Carol indicated earlier when I spoke to her, and I think Mia was present or listened to the governor's teleconference with I guess it was the AARP today, where he indicated that further discussion would be happening on Thursday. We can only presume if Carol knows it, our legal counsel knows it, we all know that guidance is not enforceable, and a law that people are already pushing back on, if it's not enforceable, you can expect that we're going to see widespread disobedience to the guidance. The AG has to have advised the governor of that. So my suspicion, and it's unfortunate that this order wasn't in place in time for our meeting today, but we saw the same thing last week where we don't hear what the next phase is until the
day of.
Going to change. So what we would propose, and I'm going to hurry the council along a little bit on this here because we do need 48 hours notice before a meeting. And we would like to propose that we have another special council meeting at 5 o'clock on Thursday. By that time, and Lori's in the next office waiting. We've already drafted an agenda that she can post, and we can just get under the wire of our 48 hours notice.
Okay, Gary, let me go to the council. Let's go to the council screen. And you guys all heard that. Who would like to make a motion on this? Brandi.
Oh, Gina did. Gina did first. Gina did.
No, I don't want to.
Well, okay. Well, you're the second, Gina. Is that correct? Brandi made the motion to table this meeting until 5 p.m. on Thursday, and a Gina second. Is that correct? Does that sound good? Okay, I'll start to roll, Brandi. I'm going to start with you, Brandi.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Maureen. Oop, your volume is not on. Sandra.
Aye.
Okay, Maureen, I'll come back to you now.
I'd like to have a discussion on that topic before we voted.
Oh.
And I just can.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
what-
Okay, well, we can have, okay, well, sorry about that. Ann, where are you at on there? Because I do not see Ann. I know she's on there, but she's just invisible. Ann, have you got a voice?
I don't see Ann on.
Okay, so before I take a roll on that, Maureen, you said you had something you wanted to discuss?
One of my concerns is that phase one is supposed to kick in on May 1st, and that it gives no timing for businesses to gear up if we wait until midnight of the day before. And so I guess I'm concerned about, maybe at least we should give the businesses in Latah County some sense in terms of what our approach is on this issue, whether it's a guideline or it's an order. But I'm feeling like people need time to gear up to make this work.
Well, Maureen, one thing I will say is that our ordinance and our resolution goes through May the 5th. We haven't changed that yet. And we haven't made a decision on that yet. And if we table this thing, and we've got enough ice to do it, then that decision still holds. So at this point in time, businesses can't plan on anything until we have the next meeting. And so with that being said, if we table this thing, and we've got 4 people that have said that, we have not got a vote from you, and we have not heard from Ann, because for whatever reason, she's not on right at the moment. So with that being said, that's where we're at. Brandi.
I would add, just as part of this discussion, that I think since right now, I didn't realize until tonight, thank you, Gary, that the governor's, this Rebound Idaho was not an order and it is not enforceable. So knowing that really changes a lot for me. And so I think the question is, if he does make an order on Thursday, then we're where we thought we were going to be in this discussion.
That's
but
correct.
Without that, I'm not comfortable with proceeding with just guidelines, but let's see if the governor does an order on Thursday. If he does an order, then that's what we're dealing with. If he doesn't, and it's still guidelines, then I would be interested. We will obviously have a discussion about what we want to do, but guidelines don't feel right to me at this point.
Okay.
As far as Maureen, you saying you want to give people some inkling of where our heads are.
Okay, Brandi, I got Ann on here.
What she said on that?
Maureen, hang on one, please. Ann, we've got you on, and did you hear what the motion was?
No, I'm sorry. My Zoom cut out for a
Okay,
minute.
Brandi made a motion, and Gina seconded to table this proceeding until 5 o'clock on Thursday, because we're going to have another special council meeting on this. And Maureen brought up a question, and so Maureen has not voted, and neither have you. We've got 4 ayes at the moment. And it's 4:53. We're going to have to finalize this vote in the next 2 minutes.
It's an I for me as well.
Okay, Maureen, did you want to vote?
I want to hear from what Gary says.
Gary, you've got 1 minute if you want to
Yeah,
get
I
this
was
out
gonna
by
say,
5.
I think Brandi said it best, and that is that they are guidelines. We found out about it today. We read through it, realized we expected the governor to issue an order. He has not done so. So the council's emergency order is still in effect until 11:59 on Monday night. So delaying this discussion until we have more information on Thursday places the council in no worse position than it is right now.
Okay. Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, so we've got a unanimous vote on this, and what it was, I'll just restate it. Brandi made a motion to table this proceeding until the next meeting, which will be on the 30th at 5 p.m. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes.
And Gina seconded it. So with that in favor, that's what we're going to do. Now we'll move on to item number 2, Gary. You had another, and Brandi, I'll come back to you in a minute, but let's see what Gary wanted. You want to get this out, Gary? It is 4:54.
No, that's just got to say it in the minutes. Okay, thank you. I was just talking to our esteemed city clerk.
Are we good there, Gary?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'm going to go to Brandi now. Brandi, you had your hand up.
I'm just not sure how things are looking from your view, but I was noticing that Gina had her hand up there. So I don't know if she still has something to say.
Gina, do you have something you want to talk about?
My concern is that the hour that we have allotted is not going to be enough time. And I know that at least 3 of us are up against another meeting that starts at 5 o'clock Thursday evening. And I think that we need to consider an hour and a half. That's all I wanted to say.
You want an hour and a half later meeting? Is that what you're saying?
I would like the same time or the same window. So 3:30 to 5 instead of 4 to 5, because we don't have enough time, I feel, in an hour to discuss the width and breadth of what stage 1 means to Latah County.
Gary, you want to address that? From the time
we can't go backwards, but we could certainly, I don't know, is your meeting on Thursday, is it from 5 to 6? Is that the?
Yeah, Gary, you're part of that meeting. It's actually the discussion for Latah County with the mayors.
Okay, well, since I'm,
mayors.
then it would be, could we start this meeting, we could start the Thursday meeting at 6 or 6:15, however long it's going to take with Latah County.
We'll figure it out on our end. That's
Okay.
fine.
Well, we need it. Gary, we're going to have a definite time, though, so that we can get Lori to make sure it's correct, right? I mean, we need to have a time.
Your Honor, if 6 or 6:30 works with this group, we could certainly set it for 6:30 on
6:30 on Thursday night works for me. How about everybody else? I'll go around the horn before I get back to Gina. You're shaking your head no, Gina. What works for you? 8 o'clock?
Our meeting is from 6 to 7. I was wrong with the time.
Sorry.
So 4 to 5 or 4 to 5:30 would be fine. I feel we need more than an hour. So,
Okay, well, the problem we've
if
got
at
is-
all possible, we need to have a little leeway.
Well, here's the problem
our
we've got.
cutoff.
Here's the problem we've got. We either have to do it at a later time because we need to have the 48-hour notice. Isn't that correct, Gary? So we cannot start it before 5 p.m. That's the problem we have, Gina.
So,
It is-
okay. Okay.
So, Gary, you
Well,
wanna-
I will move our meeting then, because I would like to be part of the conversation.
Well, yeah, it should be. And you're right. The conversation is probably going to take more than an hour. I want to have all the time we need. Who knows? It might take 2 hours. We don't know what the governor's going to do yet. And so it may be quite a thing. And it may be one of those things that we have to make some other hard calls on some other things, Gina. We don't know yet.
Well, and there might be some wisdom in moving our meeting to speak with the regional mayors to once we figure out what this looks like anyway. So maybe the bump there isn't okay. Appreciate the discussion. Thank you, counselors.
Gary, you were raising your hand.
I was just going to say, there is an opportunity to move it to Friday morning if that works better for people. We typically don't have morning council meetings, so we hadn't considered that.
And keep in mind, everybody, our enforcement is still in place. It doesn't go away, so nobody's going to be doing freewheeling. Friday works for me as well. I don't care when we do it. Is Friday better for everybody else rather than Thursday? Let's ask that question. Brandi.
The one thing I think, I mean, Friday morning is fine with me, but I also think then we may be just one day apart. If the governor's thing is going to expire or change or something different is going to happen at the end of the day on the 30th. And then we're looking the next day, which is okay. It's just something to throw out there. I know there's some thought that trying, if it makes sense for us to align timeline, that's maybe preferable than one of the things we're struggling here with right now is we have these different dates, but it's only one day. So.
Okay, we got Maureen's raising her hand.
So Gina, I have a question for you, and that is, do you need to know what the mayor's position is before you go into the meeting for all the other mayors in the community?
I think that it is always a good thing to go into a meeting with 6 or potentially 6 other communities, knowing what the largest community in the county will be doing. So if we can get Moscow ironed out prior to that meeting, and that makes me bump that meeting a couple days, that's entirely okay. I would rather go with a chunk of knowledge rather than the same kind of thing we're doing here, which is, understandable because it was guidance versus rules. But I think that most of the communities will lean on Moscow for guidance on enforceables. How's that for a word? For what will need to be done.
then it would be my recommendation that we move ahead with the 5 o'clock meeting on Thursday.
Second. Oh, you can't make a motion.
No, you've already voted on it. I just need the
Okay,
direction
great.
to go ahead.
I say yes.
I see Sandra gave a thumbs up. Art, you
Yeah,
okay with that?
That's a lot better for me. I have meetings all day Friday where we're actually hiring people, so I'd have to cancel about 7 interviews, and I would, but I'd love to not have to.
Okay, so 5 o'clock works, Gary, so we're good to go.
Lori's on it. Thank you very much.
Okay, item number 2, Gary.
Okay, this is something that's a little closer to home. Well, maybe it's not closer to home, but the council's been interested in how we are with the state talking about their soft opening or reopening their Rebound Idaho project. What is the city going to do about reopening? And I know the council's been inundated with questions about playgrounds, for instance. When are playgrounds going to be opened up? When are youth activities going to be opened up? Of course, both playgrounds and youth activities are prohibited under both under the city's emergency order and certainly under the governor's stay home order. So playgrounds would not be available to be utilized under the governor's order until the stay home order expires on Thursday night. However, under the definitions that he has provided in the guidance, those playgrounds likely would not be available to be opened in the first stage of the Rebound Idaho plan either. However, when you talk about youth activities, the same thing applies. The definition of youth activities under the guidance is not very well stated. It's pretty vague. Carol provided me with some of the draft of the youth activities discussion that's going on in the governor's office that I anticipate we will get further guidance on Thursday, or get the order on Thursday and the protocols regarding youth activities. I have put it to our staff as to, number one, can youth activities and can playgrounds even be opened up legally? So the city attorney's provided her opinion on that, and I just shared that with you a few moments ago. So on one hand, you've got playgrounds where they are prohibited, not allowed under the first stage and the current stay home order. And then you've got youth activities, which could be prohibited under one interpretation and may not be prohibited under another interpretation. But that's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is, how do you, and the mayor commented on this at the very beginning of the discussion with Carol, and the guidelines for the Rebound Idaho staged approach states that social distancing will have to be continued. And how do you have team sports where you can continue social distancing? So I've asked staff to take a look at that and see if there's any opportunity, if it is legal to do it at all, is there a way to make it safe for participants, staff, and the public? And they're currently working on that. I will tell you that I'd say pretty much categorically, the folks who do this for a living say, you know, how do you have a softball team, a baseball team, a soccer team, a pickup basketball game, any of these things that allow you to do social distancing? So that's what staff is working on now. And even though the no risk situation is don't allow it, in reality that sooner or later something has to happen. So is there a way to tailor it in some way that puts the public and puts our citizens at less risk? And so we're working through some of that. One of the big issues, as you might expect, is what do we do with the swimming pool? Again, you've got a swimming pool where you have people in locker rooms, which are natural breeding grounds for not good things. You have concessions you've got a lot of opportunity to have spread of this or provide an opportunity for this thing to take hold. So again, if you don't want any risk at all, you don't open the pool. Now, is that something that the community and the council is going to be comfortable with? So we're exploring ways, if we are directed to open it at some point, what process can we employ? What procedures can we put in place that will minimize or at least reduce that risk significantly? So staff's working hard on that right now. But again, the guidance and the protocols coming out from the governor on Thursday will help us to tailor that as well. Now, we probably won't have an answer on Thursday either if we're just getting that information a couple of hours before we have our council meeting. Chances are we're not going to be able to give you a full-blown plan, but at least we can give some direction at that time. So recreation is always going to be one of our biggest issues. We also have, as you know, and I've reported several times, that the public has not had access to our public facilities in about 5 weeks. So we have a timeline that we've developed for staff, a template, if you will, on what we call a soft reopening of actions or activities. And first and foremost on all of that is that it's a phased approach, just like the governor's Rebound Idaho. And the idea will be to open it up, see how it works, and then as we're sure that things work and we're able to reduce risk for people, public and staff, then we will do even more. Now, the good news is that we have some buildings, City Hall will have some sort of repatriation of the public back into the building. It's the main building of city government. It's also where people pay their utility bills. They have access to the city clerk, public records, and of course, administration and our elected officials. So that's foremost on our mind, how we allow that access, which will be limited in some way at the beginning so we can get a feel for it. So we're still working through that. Some things may be, we're toying with the idea of requiring that public coming into City Hall wear masks. And we have access to paper masks that we believe that might be a solution. So we're working through that. We'll have a mask protocol. I reported last time that we purchased cloth masks from a farmer's market vendor, and we're getting some more coming in. So what will happen is we will implement protocols that staff, when they are interfacing with the public, staff will be masked. And when staff is in the office, if you can socially distance, you do not need to wear a mask at your desk. But if you work with another staff member in less space than is recommended for social distancing, both city employees will wear a mask. We're also implementing increased cleaning and hygiene procedures. The police have done an outstanding job with that. They have, from the very beginning, established a protocol where they're platooning, so the same officers work with the same group of officers. So if there happens to be some risk of infection, they know exactly who the contacts were, and they are isolated from other officers. We also have officers in standby that can come in if one team shows infection. They use common police vehicles. We don't have a police car for every officer. So when an officer is on patrol and they come off patrol, they will wipe down. There's a protocol for wiping down and cleaning the vehicle. Then as the next officer coming on shift comes on, that officer will clean it again before they go. In fact, we've run that process past the health district, and they were really impressed with it. So we will utilize that same protocol for shared vehicles and those sorts of things across the city. Another issue, I'm sorry, Gina.
How does that work with the police when they pick someone up?
It's tough to socially distance when you're arresting somebody. And part of that is just the risk. wear as much PPE as they can, but it's very similar to our EMTs and our fire folks. There are certain things that you have to do. I'll give you a great example. We talked about how this soft reopening, we haven't had anybody come in for fingerprint service since the beginning of this, since we shut down operations. We know that once we open back up, there's going to be a bunch of them because there's going to be a 5-week backlog. So the staff member who deals with fingerprints, and you actually have to grab the subject's finger and roll it on a digital pad to make sure that you get the full spread of the fingerprint. And you can't social distance. So there's a process that the police have devised that staff member will wear PPE, that the staff member will be masked up. The person coming into the fingerprint space will be masked up, that they may even employ additional PPE like face shields. So, I mean, they're thinking about all of this. In our detective division, we have the forensic detectives, of course, are in a separate office, as is the supervisor, so they can be in the office at the same time, but there are 2 detectives in the pool area. So we're trying to minimize people being in the same space at the same time. So one of the things that we're looking at is, as you know, we've had anybody who can, in conformance with council's order and with the social distancing and the governor's stay home order, and as you see throughout the Rebound Idaho directive, is that maintain the folks who can work remotely. If the business can do it, encourage them to continue to do so. We will continue to do so, but we will repatriate those employees back in as we can. We will have to make sure that workstations are moved and kept at a social distance. We're installing sneeze shields for those employees who meet with the public at any time, or other employees even. Those who can work from home efficiently and have no real need to be at the office, then they will be allowed to continue to work from home throughout the 4 different phases of this soft opening, or I guess it's 3 phases, excuse me, of this soft opening. And we've even gone so far as to say that if they can work efficiently from home, that may be a protocol that we want to utilize in the future. It saves us office space. If we have someone who can work as efficiently from home as they can from work, then it might make some sense to allow that flexibility in certain cases. So I guess every cloud has a silver lining. We also have employees who are, as they work from home, they will need to come back in. A great example is our finance director. It's going to be tough to get this budget prepared over Zoom. So Sarah is going to have to come back in. And so she will do half-time in the office working on budget and those sorts of things, and half-time out of the office. Again, reducing that amount of time for potential exposure. We're also trying to accommodate those employees who, just like everybody else in the city, the Moscow School District has let out for the year, essentially. So there are issues with children who should be in school because of the COVID virus threat are home. So we're trying to accommodate people working from home and being able to meet that need as well. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible. With that, I just wanted to let the council, I just wanted to hit on one more thing. I think I mentioned last time that our community development department, where they do permitting, that sort of thing, they can do almost all of that online and by telephone. That is, we don't intend on opening up the Paul Mann building within the first phase. And that's because the inspectors can be dispatched to go out. Some of them are working from home as well. Permits can be reviewed online. We have digital review and submittals at this time. If someone doesn't have access or is unable to avail themselves of either telephone or that technology, then they can make an appointment and they can come in as well, at which time the staff will also wear masks, follow those same protocols to protect not only the public, but to protect and reduce the opportunity of infection to the staff member as well. That being said, that's the beginning point, and we've got a couple of departments who have already put those things together. I rolled it out this morning at department head meeting. Each of the other departments is developing their own protocols. We will bring those all together, and those will be available for council review. And we will also have, as we are going to implement this, we will make sure that the public knows through press releases, public information, social media, that this is what's going on. The anticipation is, assuming that the governor has his order in place on Thursday, the anticipation is we will start the first phase of this soft reopening on Monday, May 4th. Now, there are some other things that will also occur. We are anticipating that advisory commissions will not meet during the month of May. So we will have to have staff interface with the chairs of those commissions. There are land use commissions and quasi-judicial commissions that may need to meet. And if they do, they have protocols for doing that as well. But until we get set back up on fairly regular business in the city, we aren't equipped to have Zoom meetings for every commission that wants to meet. So it'll take us some time to do that. We are anticipating that there will be no city council committee meetings during the month of May either, that we will continue to bring items directly to council, try to get the agendas out as early as possible to give council a chance to review those. It's anticipated that we will have, at this point, depending on how it goes, we are anticipating 2 more Zoom council meetings. That would be the 4th of May and the 18th of May. So we will continue to engage the public as we did in this council meeting, get information out as early as possible and invite the public to engage the council by email, conversation, and phone call prior to the meeting for all non-quasi-judicial matters. It's not as good as having the council in chambers and having the public there. I had an interview with the Argonaut on a couple days ago, and what I told the reporter was that Moscow's always had transparent council meetings with full public participation. So council wants to return to that as soon as possible. But again, we need to see how it works before we do that. So with that, what will happen is in every 2-week segment, different, shall we say, more repatriation will occur. The last week, so you'll have a week of something being utilized, and then the second week of that 2-week period will be used to analyze and evaluate how that is working, and we will look at that before we go into the next phased approach. So the idea here, almost coincidentally with the Rebound Idaho, is by the end of June, maybe a little before that, we will be back to whatever the new normal is at that point. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Okay, one of the things I want to say, I'll call on you first, Sandra, but one of the things I want to say after Gary said all that is, we've got this thing in front of us that we're going to be dealing with Thursday. I don't suspect that we're going to see a whole lot different than what these guidelines are. The wording, I hope, changes, and we'll see that. So what I would say is the stuff that we talked about on our first agenda item today, keep that in mind, keep that fresh in your memory. And of course, it was great having Carol here talking to us about that. But that's going to be our focus on Thursday in the direction. And keep one other thing in mind too. Who knows what it'll be until we actually get it. And it's going to be a last minute thing. So don't get frustrated by that, because that's just the way it is for all of us, unfortunately. And what we'll do is we'll be moving forward. And keep in mind too, we have an order in place that goes through the 5th. So we're not at a die-hard thing on Thursday as well. And with that, Sandra, you had a question for Gary.
I did. I can't help but sometimes go to almost maybe not quite worst case scenario, but not great case scenario. And that is what happens if we don't get an order from the governor. And if it's all just guidelines, it seems like it's kind of a free for all from there.
We're going to discuss that on Thursday. So we'll go from there. I mean, like I said, Sandra, we've got an order in place till May the 5th. And we'll just have to deal with it how it comes by. I cannot imagine him not having something a little bit more concrete rather than just guidelines. But other questions for Gary? I see Maureen down there waving.
Gary, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to you, to Mia, to the mayor, and to everyone who's a staff person at the city right now, because what you just ran through in the last 7 minutes was so much work. And I just want to say that as a city council person and as a resident of Moscow, I appreciate the foresight and thinking we need to plan not just what the governor comes up with their phases, but how do we implement that within the city. So thank you very much.
You know,
if I may, I'd like to thank the staff. You know, I help coordinate it, but really it's the work of those folks that has made this happen. So they've gone above and beyond.
You know, and with that being said, Maureen, and you're absolutely correct, Gary, the staff's done a wonderful job through this last 5-6 weeks with what we've had to deal with. But when it all comes down to it, too, it's about our nice little community in our county and how well we do it here in our area. And that's what really matters. And the leadership that all you counselors have as well, Maureen, is a big deal. And so I wanted to kind of get that point across when we're kind of cramming some things through sometimes, and it seems like it's fast, and yes, it is. But boy, sometimes we don't know these things until at the last minute too. So, with that, other questions for Gary? Brandi.
I just want to kind of recap what you said, since we did get several questions about the youth sports, and I know that the answers are not clear right now in the governor's guidelines, and we're hoping for that clarity on Thursday. So we heard from martial arts, we've heard from sports teams and coaches and parents that some are thinking they will be able to resume practice on the 1st. So is the answer that we don't know yet? On Thursday, the governor may make it clear that some of those activities will not be permitted if he's ordering it that way. And then that evening, depending on what he has said, we may define it further. Is that accurate?
Gary?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. The governor, certainly through his executive authority, as he did with his stay-home order, has the ability to prohibit activities. However, the governor does not have the ability to tell the city what it will do recreationally. I mean, we can still offer suppose that he does not prohibit playgrounds or does not prohibit youth sports. As I said, that's half the equation. That's the legal part of the equation. The other part of it is, as a city, as a council, when you look at the activities and the risks that are the risks that those activities entail, the council may choose, no matter what the governor says. If the governor says, fine, that's okay, the council may still choose to say, we don't feel safe in our Parks and Rec department offering those activities, or we don't feel safe in allowing tournaments to be on our ball fields, or we don't feel the risk is acceptable to open the pool. We don't feel the risk is acceptable to open up playgrounds. That really is, it doesn't make it illegal. It just, that is the council's prerogative to determine what activities are offered through our programs and our properties. So, yeah, it's one of those things. I wanted to take a moment too. I've really been impressed with, it seems like the council's, the mayor's order and the council's resolution expiring at midnight or 11:59 on May 4th is only a couple of days away from where the state ended up. It's only a couple of days or 1 day away from where the state of Washington ended up. It's only a couple of days away from where the United States of America ended up. So I really want to compliment the council on the foresight and the mayor on putting this in place back when there was not a lot of information. And I think that the experience has borne out that the mayor and council made the correct decision.
Brandi.
One more quick one. So when pertaining to the plans that you're working on for the staff gradual, city procedures rollout, you mentioned like the first week would be implementing something new and the second week would be assessing. Do you mean assessing procedurally how it worked, or are we talking about assessing health-wise? Has it created a problem?
Both.
Okay.
Is it working efficiently, and do people feel at risk? And have we had any adverse results from it from a health perspective?
Because I guess the only thing I don't know that is enough time to really know the answer to if there's any adverse health consequences before moving to the next step. So I just think that's something to keep in mind as you continue to work on that.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we probably pretty well covered everything that we're going to cover today. I look forward to seeing every one of you on Thursday. Thank you so much for your patience, and we're getting our just in. We have 4 meetings in March. We're going to end up with 4 meetings in April, too. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Maureen made the motion. Art made the second. I'll turn your volume on and say aye at once.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Anybody opposed? We're adjourned to 5:26. I'll see you all Thursday evening. Good night and thank you.